And so the appearance is exactly the same. It's not that you will, if this becomes obvious or is obvious, then it's not that there is a change in perception. It's not that there isn't the illusion of becoming even, but it may just be obvious that that's illusory. And does that mean all those pearls have not been recorded, Emerson?
It was live.
Oh, you've not missed all those gems. And so we are talking about the loss of dreams, the loss of hopes, the loss of fantasies. And by the loss of them, I don't mean that they couldn't appear anymore, that there couldn't be fantasies, that there couldn't be dreams or hopes. It's just that they have no substance, they have no weight. Whereas for me, because this isn't okay, and I'm not okay, there is an urgency and a power to dreams and hopes and fantasies of fairy stories that I just want them to be real. Well, they are real. They're real stories. They're real fantasies. They're real hopes, and they're real dreams. But that is their only reality. They're real fears. If we're talking about anxiety, you know, real fears about the future. The fear is real. The future is not real. The hope is real. But the future that you're hoping for, that is not. It simply isn't. This is. And so this is a message of loss, seemingly. And it can feel like a dreadful loss. It can feel like despair. Because what is my life without hope? So that's the dreadful news, but it's also, that is the liberation, that is the freedom from my hopes, my dreams, my fears. This is already free. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I hoped for. It's not what I dreamed of. They were fantasies. Made it sound a bit grim there. It's not grim, but it can sound it. This isn't any way, any particular way. And that was always the fantasy, or the illusion was that life could be a certain way. Well, this is always, always. But of course, I always wanted it my way. That's why I'd say that it's not what you want. Life is simply as it is. It's incredibly obvious. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. And of course, the as it is can be the wishing and hoping and dreaming and fantasizing that it could be otherwise. That's simply as it is. If that's as it is. But if we're going to describe it, sometimes this is described as liberation, then it is liberation from the need for life to show up to be any other way than it is. And by show up, I don't mean what's seen, what's heard, what's felt, but I mean what we would normally call ourselves, what most human beings would refer to as my thoughts, my emotions. They're free. They're already free. So we're speaking of the end of waiting. I was always waiting. Waiting for this to be right. Waiting for me to be okay. Waiting for my life to be complete, to feel fulfilled. And again, it's just so glaringly obvious there isn't anything to wait for. Unless I say so. And then without the waiting, there's no there's no knowing how it is. You don't need to know. Because if I'm going to get it right, I need to know, because I need to put a plan in. I need to have I need to know what to do in order to get out of this shit. I'm in this shithole and I need a way out. Well, the most dreadfully liberating revelation could be that there is no way out. There is no one in prison. There is no one enslaved. There is no escape. Where would you go? So like most things about this message, it sounds dreadful. And the great paradox is that anything that sounds dreadful is liberating. So there is no escape, but then there's no need. No more plans to make. By plans, I mean escape plans. You can still plan to go on holiday. Sure. Or plan to visit friends. And all the movement, any movement is absolutely still. So this is always moving. It never moves. And that makes absolutely no sense. And that's why it's liberating. Because if life makes no sense, nonsense, then it leaves nothing to be worked out. Life is incomprehensible. I don't know what I'm speaking about. That's the freedom. The whole illusion of being me is that I know what I'm speaking about. I know what I know. Okay, if you want to ask any questions, then obviously just put your hand up or just put them in there. Or just write it down.
I think Glenn has a question. Glenn J, please unmute yourself. Or maybe he wants me to read it. Bloody hell, Tim. This is from Glenn. What do I do now to wake up? Dream crusher on the loose.
Thanks, Glenn. Just
And this one is from Gigi. Gigi, do you want to ask the question yourself or do you want me to read it? I'll read it. Is non-dualism similar to agnosticism?
no. No, definitely not. I used to be an RE teacher, a really dreadful RE teacher. And so, of course, I would teach about, I was teaching faith and ethics, is what we called it. And so, of course, the kids would always ask me about my beliefs, my religious beliefs. And I would always say I'm an agnostic. Simply because I couldn't make up my mind, which, you know, agnostic, I just thought it was the safest place to sit on a fence. No, non-duality is like the fence is burnt down. So if you wanted to sit, well, there's nowhere to sit. So in that sense, non-duality is very different to sitting on the fence. I can see why you might think it's similar, because it sounds, you know, that an agnostic might say, well, I don't know if there's a God or not. So it can sound similar in that it's about not knowing. But the not knowing that is being spoken of here is not an agnostic not knowing. Because we're not speaking about a belief. I don't believe what I'm speaking about. Now, non-duality can be a belief system. It can be a philosophy. Yeah, it can be a philosophy of life, but that's not what's being spoken of.
Dario, please go ahead.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Daria.
You hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to say I'm wearing a similar shirt than like you.
Good work, Daria.
I was wondering if like the apparent me has all emotional or energetic attachment to other people, apparently. And if this is seen, or does all those not appear anymore?
Now, again, there's no way of making blanket statements about that.
Yeah.
Because whatever appears just appears. You know, it's just there isn't a right answer to that. But I would say that their attachment is absolutely natural, but the attachments that self makes, that I make, they feel a matter of life and death, because they're part of myself. So you could say what dies, or what seems to no longer appear, is that without this relationship, without that relationship, I would die. Or it would feel like I'd lost a part of myself. And so the weight of relationships is very different. The feel of relationships, but of course the appearance of relationships may appear exactly the same. But really there's no one in relationship. There are relationships, but there's no one in them. And of course it's the I'm in one that gives all the fear is in that, the fear of losing it, or the fear of it not being the relationship that I hoped it would be. I mean, really, there are no relationships. There aren't any things to be in relation, let alone human beings to be in relations. There aren't any things in relation to other things. It appears that there are, but so the appearance of it is that there are separate things, and that still appears that there's separate things. But when everything is empty, don't ask me how. When everything is empty, of course, emptiness isn't in relation to more emptiness or other emptiness.
Would you, like some people say, this is no thing? Would you agree with this statement?
Doesn't mean anything. I think if you use the word nothing or no thing, it's just another way of trying to express the emptiness or the absence of separation. So there's an appearance of separation. The appearance of separation isn't going anywhere. That's how life appears to human beings. It appears. It seems that this isn't.
Yeah, I was trying to wear the same shirt as you, so that the appearance of separation is not as great today.
And it's a noble effort. Well, and I've already commended you on it. It's a fine shirt. But is what I was waiting for. So if I speak about it that way, that I was waiting till I knew non-separation, so that I knew oneness, so that I knew the absence of myself, because I was sick of myself. I'm guessing that resonates with most of you.
Yes.
You know, I've had enough. I've had enough of myself. You know, I'm sick and tired of myself. I'm exhausted. I've had enough of it. And what I really wanted was to be. I was waiting because it was the only way I could conceive of what non-duality was speaking about. Was I'll be there to notice my own absence, to be aware of when I'm gone. Maybe that's the biggest joke of all of speaking about non-duality, is because I feel that it's inevitable that's all that self will do. Will just fantasize and imagine, when I know that I'm gone, then I'll be okay. It'll be okay. Life will be okay. Because I can see, I have a real sense that I'm the problem here. There is no knowing the absence of the one who never was. There's nothing to see. So, it's a cruelest joke, because, I mean, I've said this plenty of times before, but there was no recognition. There is no recognition of no self. There's nothing to see. There's nothing to recognize. There's no one to see it. It's the ultimate fantasy that if you hear this message and it resonates, then you can't help but imagine, how would it be? Well, it's too terribly boring and simple how it will be. It will be as it is, and it won't even will be. It just is as it is. That's it. Now that's the whole message in a nutshell. And the whole obsession that self has with the absence of itself. So for most of my life, I was obsessed with myself. Then the story switched and I heard this message. So then I was obsessed with the absence of myself. Same story, just with a little twist. So I spent in the story of Tim, he spent 40 years improving himself like hell he did, but in his he felt as though that was what was trying to be done, and then he spent another 15 years trying to get rid of himself.
Is there a
But it's
book
the
coming
same-
out about that?
It's the same game, you know, whether self is trying to improve, whether I'm trying to improve myself or whether I'm trying to rid myself of myself. It's just a different, it's the same energy. It's the same improvement program, one by adding to and the other by annihilation, you know. And the dreadfully wonderful news is there's nothing to be annihilated. There is already nothing. So you take nothing from nothing and you're left with nothing. That sounds dreadful. But then it turns out, wonder of wonders, nothing is everything.
Thank you, Tim.
So there was nothing lost and there was nothing to lose. And the great freedom, the indescribable freedom, is nothing to lose. So there is still all the seeming loss. By the way, that can sound really fantastic, nothing to lose. So all the seeming loss still apparently happens, still appears. Because all the things, the illusion is that there are separate things that have an existence in time and they continue and they're born and they live and they die. That is how life appears. We are not speaking of escape from that. There is no escape from that. That is how life appears.
But there's no me in it.
No. No.
It makes no sense to me, of course.
Did you say it makes no sense or it makes sense?
It makes no sense to me that there's no me.
No, but I will say that there's no more any no me than there is a me, because of course no me only exists because of me, doesn't it?
Hmm.
There isn't a no me. You know, it's not, again, this is the whole illusion of becoming. I can only imagine in this illusion of time and of becoming. So I could become a no me.
It appears like you're talking about something.
Yeah, I'm not talking about something.
Like you have something to share.
No, that is the greatest problem with speaking about this, Daria. Is of course it can't help but sound as though something is being spoken about. It's not. I mean, I use the word this, and of course there is no this. This is just as illusory as God or me.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
Roberta, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Tim. I hope you can hear me. I trust you do.
Yeah,
Very
I can hear you
nice.
fine.
Very nice to be here. I've so enjoyed many of your videos, and this is my first time for a Zoom call. And originally I talked to Emerson about trying to raise my hand, and that question has long gone. And since then, I'm going to pick up on what you were just describing, if I can piece it together now again. You talked about having, this life, this story that you lived as a seeker. And I too had a similar life. Very interested from an early age in psychology and got it very much into that. And then gurus and Zen and so it still reads to me from here that you did kind of come out the other end, you might say, or like say in the Zen tradition, although the tradition is that it is an unspeakable message, maybe you might say as well. They culturally play it up as kind of an enigma that once you figure it out, or that's maybe how I read into it, hopefully. Yeah. But it does seem to me that you have attained it or reached it, or you're speaking from a different place, maybe as a result of how you persisted in some, you just were successful, seems to me. Could you say that?
No.
It's
No,
so hard to be.
No, it's all very lovely what you've said, but no,
I know that's not your message.
No,
but that's still my question.
How it feels when you say that I've been a success. I mean, the only, it's really funny because there's no one to be successful or fail, and that is, I mean, that feels the truest thing to say. Well, in great honesty, this is not even remotely anything that I ever imagined, and it doesn't feel like success. It feels like the impossibility of success or failure.
But if somebody starts out and they think, I want to be a mother, they have a baby, and 25 years in, they think, oh my God, that was nothing like I thought I was going to sign up for. But I thank God I'm a mother. They might have, they may have a different idea about it, but they mothered, or they entered something with an unknown. Well, of course, they probably had expectations, but if you live long enough, you understand most expectations you have to put aside. I don't know. It's very hard. It's very hard to.
Well, I mean, it is funny because I did fantasize about speaking about non-duality. So in that sense, I mean, I could go with that and you could say, okay, so using the storyline of how you've just described it, yeah, I got what I asked for, but there is no sense of that at all.
Yes, okay.
Because this, I'm not.
It is really, the empty.
I can't emphasize enough. This is not what I asked for.
Mm-hmm. I know. I hate that part of it.
Because it's not.
Well,
the most compassionate thing that wants to be said here is that you cannot get what you're asking for because it doesn't exist. This is already everything and nothing. So even if you're asking for nothing, this is nothing already. And whatever you're asking for, this is everything already. So there is nothing to come. And the nothing to come it's like a full stop. It really is. It's like an empty full stop.
I might have another minute of your time to say too that the other aspect of it is I've had times in my life where I felt like I just, blew out all the stops and, drugs and, unemployment and, then got myself back on track. But I've had very strict tracks as well. I mean, I took retreat like 6 months I had serious times, and I swung the other polar opposite. And I currently am experiencing social, cultural, it's like, in some ways, I guess, I fear that that without a purpose and a way of life, you know, I guess if you just give yourself to a path, you just, you know, trudge and trust. But without that, I fear my anger and irritability have increased, you know, cynicism.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with
I do
cynicism.
find some jokes that I do have a greater appreciation for a lot of good comics.
There's no tracks, Roberta. You know the tracks that you talked about?
Yes.
Well, they're just your stories of the tracks. There's no tracks. You didn't follow a journey. You haven't been on a journey to get here. Unless you tell the story. Unless you tell the story of how you got here. It's the end of we're speaking of the illusion of the journey and the one who's on it. And it's not what many people want to hear, because of course that's most precious. Who am I without my journey? Who am I with where, you know, my successes and my failures without
where could I end up?
Yeah. And where might I end up? Well, you just don't know that. And you already don't know that. And the whole illusion, again, the story that self hangs on to for dear life as real, is that I've been on this journey that has brought me here, and there is the track ahead. I can see the path ahead. And there's many paths that I could choose from. Well, there was no path to get here, and there's no path away from here. And there is no here. And then you can't.
I know it's fine.
And then you can't say. And I know it sounds dreadful, but this.
I know.
That is the freedom that we're speaking of. This is always the beginning and the end. You know, so the story that it began somewhere else. There is no other time or place where this begins, where it began. So this is beginning.
I've kind of glossed over right now.
It's fine.
But you can continue to talk. I just might mute myself.
Okay.
My dog is getting upset.
Thanks, Roberta.
Thank you. I'm still here. I wish I wasn't, but.
Yeah.
Anita, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi Tim.
Hi, Anita.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah, I know there is no path, and but it seems that a lot of time sadness is arising, and maybe the answer is there is no reason for it. But that is what is happening.
Yeah. Well, if there's self's always hiding from sadness or running from sadness.
But there is also no self, so.
But I'm afraid of sadness because, you know, we've all been heavily conditioned that sadness means there's something wrong. And one of the great freedoms is freedom for sadness. Life is inevitably sad. I don't speak of this message as though it's a path to happiness or a way to be more happy or more joyful. And yet, the more obvious and freely sadness appears, it's very clear that more freely and obvious joy appears. Because joy and sadness are equal expressions of love. And what self is most afraid of, self tends to think that it's afraid of being unsafe or insecurity. But it seems that one of the things, or what self fears most, is love. And by love, love is a tricky word to use. I don't mean love as in the sense of relational love. I mean this love, which just is exactly as it is. And what I'm always trying to do is hide from what is. And one of the things that I fear most is that if I allowed it, if I allowed sadness, then the tears would never stop, because I've tried to hide from sadness and tried to push it away. I've resisted because I don't know about you, but most people I know, most human beings I know, we were brought up to that, oh, it's okay, don't cry, don't be sad, you know. So of course, you know, I only want you to be happy. Said with the best intentions, but said from the place of self. So the adult said to you when you were a child, don't be sad, because it hurt the parents to see the sadness. So, and they didn't want to say, so they'd had a lifetime of hiding from sadness anyway. Sadness is absolutely natural. As natural as joy. And I'm not talking about an escape from sadness. It's almost that sadness is liberated. Life is loss. All things are always being lost. This is appearing and disappearing. Everything is born and dies. Always. There is no escape. That's how life is. Life is essentially unknowable, because the illusion is that I'm here for a time. You know, everything has its time. Well, it doesn't. It's always lost. And so I'd be amazed if any human being, if this becomes obvious to any human being, that there wouldn't be more sadness. I would be amazed. I'm not saying it couldn't happen. You know, I hear of people who are in a state of constant bliss, the kind of thing that I fantasized about. But that's not what I'm speaking of. Of course, life is sad. The appearance of life is loss. And if the running stops or the hiding stops, then there may be a lot of tears. And often there'll be tears and laughter. And sometimes you won't know the difference between the two.
Yeah, I recognize that. Mhm.
So it's not that I stopped running or I stopped hiding. It's that the ability was no longer available. It just didn't. Whatever there was here that enabled this human being to hide from grief was no longer available. And it's obvious that what I called sadness and was always very afraid of, that it was wrong, is not wrong at all. It's the most beautiful, the most human. The most compassionate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
It's that because this non-duality can sound like a panacea. Oh, it's not happened to anyone, so it won't hurt me anymore. You know, if it's not me, then it won't hurt. Well, I've got some bad news on that front, but it is the most wonderful bad news, is that it will hurt like hell. It will hurt because the illusion of you was the illusion that you could defend yourself against life. You could filter life. You could sanitize life. You could clean it up, make it be how you wanted it to be. Well, life is inherently dirty, messy, shitty. And that is where all the beauty is, you know? A flower's only beautiful because the next time you looked, it's withered and it's rotting. The transience of all things, seemingly, is where all the love and the beauty is. And this isn't a hiding from that. This isn't an escape from that. It's like the ability to hide or escape is not available anymore. And so there it is, here it is, in all its glorious, you could say in all its glorious horror, but there is no horror in it when it's just beautifully as it is and couldn't be otherwise.
Mhm.
Marianne, please go ahead.
Hi, Tim. Nice
Hi,
to see
Maggie.
you.
Hi.
Tim, I talked to you about a year ago, not that you're going to remember, but one of the things that I had spoken about was that I had this glimpse, and it was obvious in that glimpse that, there was no me. And, then I was asking you, does it actually disappear? And you had said, or what I heard, right, was, no, it's not like a disappearance. And that kind of stuck with me. It doesn't even feel like it goes away. And then I got fed up with non-duality, and I went about my business. And you know how it's like, oh, but you can't get away. And then
No.
all of a sudden, I don't know, it just was obvious to me, like, oh, you don't get rid of the bad parts of life. All
No.
of this, all of my thing is to get rid of those bad. And then in that kind of relaxation, I see everything is just happening. And then there's this energy, I would call it, like, of me that comes in after. It's like it pops up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like it disappeared. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's this, and then I'll feel the me come in, and it's interesting what it thinks, but there is no disappearance. I don't know. That's my experience. I hope that you can
No, there is no disappearance, because there's nothing to disappear. And of course, the disappearance of something that doesn't exist isn't noticeable. So there's no noticing the absence. You can notice the appearance, the seeming appearance of me because it feels energetic. You know, I feel embodied. I feel insecure usually. Usually I feel afraid at some level. You know, when there's that sense of me.
That comes in.
I mean, the energy of what we call self is really is really just the energy of, I need to protect myself. I need to do this. I need to do that. And that energy is very obvious. So me is noticeable. The absence of me is not noticeable, because it's the absence of nothing.
Yeah, that was really helpful when you had said that. I hadn't, maybe other people were saying that, but it didn't land, you know. And it's actually now fascinating to see it, because it's so quick. It's so over embedded in anything that's going on. One other thing I wanted to ask you, I think I asked you this last year too. Do you still dream with like an eye-centric in sleep?
I remember you asking me that. Yeah, I do.
Because I'm still fascinated by that component, how in the dream,
yeah,
that self is just resurrected perfectly, you know?
And it's kind of guessing, but if I had to guess, yeah, I think there's still a sense of, the dreams very much have me in them. Yeah, I think that's true. Not necessarily always, maybe, I don't know. I mean, what does it actually mean? It doesn't mean anything, but yeah, I think, yeah, I think maybe I do turn up in dreams, because dreams are all memory based. So especially if I have dreams about when I was a teacher, and I have all the anxieties of how it felt being, you know, my worst fears as a teacher. I've got a year 10 class of 15-year-olds, and they're running riot, and I've totally lost control. And that can still turn up, because, you know, I mean, it's just like residue. It feels like those residue memories, when they appear as how it was then. And how it was then was, I was terrified of losing control.
Right. It does feel like a contracted energy that is like stored somehow. And you can definitely feel that, and definitely feel that in dreams. At least I do. Yeah.
If I'm really honest, I mean, I very rarely remember dreams. I don't have much, you know. I've always thought, well, I've missed out, because I would have lots of friends who would tell me, you know, vivid detail about their dreams, and then I'd have some friends who'd tell me about their lucid dreaming, and I was thinking about, oh, that sounds really good. I never had any of that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
John, please go ahead.
Hello, Tim.
Hi, John. Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, great to see you too. Not long ago, I was listening to Tony Parsons, and he sort of insisted that the way and the moment and the time that somebody's sense of their self could fall away was something that was sort of totally impersonal. I mean, I get it that this is not something you can work for. Like when, you know, often people ask you, you know, what you did before, and didn't what you do before, didn't it have any effect on and you say, well, no, it might have looked like it did, but now that now that one it is reflected upon, he said, you know, it's seen that no, it actually has got nothing to do with you at all.
I would completely agree with that. Yeah. And it sounds like I'm agreeing with, you know, my master, but yeah. But I couldn't disagree with Tony. But no, there is a real sense of one of the most glaringly obvious things was whatever I'd learned, whatever I'd understood, whatever had seemingly happened in the story of Tim, it was of no significance whatsoever. That is incredibly obvious. You know, what happened yesterday, I know in the story, it still looks like it's affecting what's happening here now, but they're just stories. And that's the freedom, really. The freedom from cause and effect is that, because the whole notion of cause and effect being a reality is in order for me to feel a little more secure in my knowledge of what the shit is going on. Because without cause and effect being real in a very, you know, in a concrete way, then how will I keep myself safe? You know, how will I understand? Because without cause and effect, understanding becomes redundant. It's redundant. Yeah, it's just like all of that knowledge. And of course, in my story, I could say, yeah, of course, none of this, what's happening now, me speaking to you lot, could have possibly happened without me going 10 years to see Tony Parsons. But it is very obvious that that didn't actually happen.
Yeah.
It appeared to happen.
So, Tim, you know, it feels to me that is crystal clear. And yet I'm about to ask you this question, which you actually just answered, but all the same. So my feeling is that if you're in a close relationship with somebody who doesn't buy any of this stuff,
yeah,
it sort of feels like it's holding you into, it's reinforcing your sense of self. Because you know, in the sort of standard interactions in a relationship, there are moments of defensiveness and moments of expansiveness, and it feels like that sort of the duality of a relationship is being reinforced, and so it's sort of like it's holding me back. I know there's no me to be held back, but it sort of feels
which
like,
do you mean? You mean the relationship is holding you back?
Yeah. It feels like, I mean, and there's no way I wish to end that relationship, but I can feel that it, because the truth of what you're saying is something that cannot be shared. Apparently cannot be shared there. I mean, I know it's true whether the other person knows it or not. The truth of it is not. But it's just. It just feels like there's such a strong sense of duality of two people agreeing or disagreeing, and that to me has the effect of making me feel like it's forcing me to sort of invest myself into that sense of self when I know it's bollocks.
Yeah, I really get what you mean, but it really doesn't matter. You know, that's the best answer I've got, John, is that I know it might feel that way, but it makes not a jot of difference.
Yeah.
No,
Of course. I mean, if it comes down to, you know, it is just what it is, then within the context of what is no thing, all thing energy, then, I mean, there aren't any individuals, and I can, on that level, of course, nothing has any significance whatsoever. It just is what it is.
Yeah, but I do understand. I do get
It doesn't feel like that.
your
Some days
sense
it doesn't feel like that.
that it doesn't feel like that. Exactly. Yeah. No.
Thanks, Tim.
This does make relationships tricky. Seemingly,
Yeah.
It does. I understand. I know what you mean, John. I think I know what you mean.
Question here from Gigi. It seems that the world as we know it is centered around human race in particular, as if the world is there for human race experience and purposes. What is your take on this from a non-dual perspective?
Well, there isn't life and human beings for a start. There isn't any purpose. There isn't a reason human beings are here, and there isn't a reason human beings have become, for human beings, the center of the universe. That life doesn't have a center. And by that, I mean, the center would be the purpose, the meaning, the reason. When I'm speaking of emptiness, that's really what I mean by emptiness, empty of all of those things that I place upon life, especially my life, especially this life especially. There must be a purpose. There must be some meaning to life. Because meaninglessness sounds nihilistic, sounds devoid of love, devoid of compassion, devoid of caring. Well, the most incredible news is that all of those are very naturally human. They were never yours. All of the traits that you've thought were your best. You've done some self-analysis. I don't doubt you have. You've done a shitload of it, I don't doubt. And you've analyzed your good qualities. You've spent most of the time picking fault with yourself, but you've also gone, yeah, but I'm not all bad. I'm quite kind. I'm fairly generous. And you've got the good qualities, and you've made those good qualities very precious, that they're mine, that there's something to do with you. Well, the wonder is none of what you've called yourself ever belonged to you. It was never anything to do with you. It is nothing to do with you. It's just a human being being human. That's on a very basic level. That's what we're speaking of, being human. With the only illusion that is you being human and me being human. And human beings, if me, you could say, no longer turns up, doesn't turn up for work anymore, then there is no difference, in a very real sense, there is no difference between a tree, a dog, a bird, a fish, an ant, and human beings. But you might still like the company of some human beings better than some dogs and birds and ants. But there's plenty of human beings you'd rather avoid and spend time with the dog. or the birds. And that essential no difference is really where the whole term, if I'm using the term non-duality, that's really what I'm speaking of. There is no difference. The difference is only apparent. The difference is in the appearance. So things appear different and things appear separate, but they're not. You can't say what the sameness is. My best attempt is emptiness. But, you know, it doesn't really matter about the words. But this is all the same, appearing all different. I don't think that was an answer to the question at all. Not even remotely close, was it? I don't oh, I can't even think what the question was.
I'll put on the next person. David, go ahead, please.
Okay, I've got to. Can you hear me, Tim?
Yeah, you're on, David.
Hi. Hiya, nice to see you again.
And you.
It's just apropos of what John was talking about relationships. I was just reminded of a wee kind of cameo appearance by this couple on Conscious TV. It's a fantastic initiative. Do you remember Conscious TV?
Yeah.
Did you ever watch it? It's wonderful.
Yeah, I did.
I think.
Yeah. No, I did watch. Oh, yeah.
And you're looking back.
There wasn't much. At one point, there wasn't much I didn't watch, David.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I watched them all too, you know. But it was such a trailblazing thing, I think, you know. And it's lovely that what's happening here just now with, you know, Emerson, etc. You know, back in those days, it really was blazing a trail in that wee studio with the black backdrop and the pot plant, and it's very intimate. But there was a couple on, and just talking about this kind of balance of belief and not between couples. And, you know, what I'm going to say is quite obvious, actually, but to have been in that situation must have been tricky. I think the woman was doing the rounds of everything, you know, in the way that most of us have done at some point, absolutely everything. Yeah. And her partner was in utter despair. You know, he wasn't remotely interested. I mean, but he just pissed off. He'd had enough. And he thought, right, I'm going to check this out. And of course, guess what happened? Inverted commas. Yeah. He got it.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dramatic.
Oh, she must have been so pissed.
They were sitting on the sofa, you know, and you thought, my God, what is the future, the non-existent future hold for them? But anyway, it was a lovely little thing. You just don't know what's going to happen. He was poleaxed.
Yeah, I mean, there is one of the things that's very obvious is that there is no justice, and that's one of the best examples, isn't it? That you know you can't earn this. You can't. You know, this is. So, of course, it's nothing happening. You know, if there is a seeming falling away of self, there's nothing happening, and you don't make nothing happening. You don't deserve nothing happening. And one of the reasons it feels so loving is that this is in spite of what I did. This is regardless of what I did, or regardless of worthiness. And the death of worthiness is a beautiful thing. You know?
I'm sure you can remember the frustration of that kind of,
oh, I can.
They've got it, I haven't, bastards.
I used to get really, I've called Tony Parsons all kinds of names.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, in utter frustration, and the pure frustration of.
I think he used to say, you know, when people would raise this, he would, you know, say, you know, what about those that it doesn't? He just say tough luck.
Tough luck, yeah. I mean, I can laugh about it now. I did laugh about it then, but I would laugh and swear.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my little story. So thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thanks.
Question here from Gigi. What reasons, information, experience, or evidence convinced him to perceive and agree with conviction of non-dualism?
Blimey. Give me another go at that, Emerson. Do it again.
Okay. What reasons, information, experience, or evidence convinced him to perceive and agree with conviction of non-dualism?
This has nothing to do with conviction or agreement or understanding. I can't remember what the other word was, but
Reasons, information, experience,
yeah.
or
So
evidence.
this is in spite of reasoning, because it's not reasonable. This message is not reasonable, is it? It's fucking not. And this is in spite of what seems to, well, it's regardless of any conviction. It's in spite of any effort. So it may appear that effort was required, but do you know, it's not even that I agree with what I'm saying. It's not even, there is no agreement required at all. So the unconditional love is absolutely unconditional. This is, you don't have to agree. You can't get more unconditional than that. I mean, you're free to disagree. That's how unconditional this love is, which life is. I mean, yeah.
This one is from Facebook. There's a whole bunch of questions here. Is there a difference between purpose and purposelessness from a non-duality perspective?
Well, yeah, I tend to talk about it as when we're speaking about hope, because you'll have heard lots of times, and I heard it lots of times, that this message is hopeless. And that there is no hope. And of course, there is no hope if there's no future. And it can sound hopeless, but without hope, there is no hopeless. Hopeless only as an idea, as a concept, as a fantasy about an imagined future. Hopeless only exists because of hope. So when hope, you could say hope dies, and hope only, when I say dies, I mean in what it really means. You know, the impossibility of hope. Well, the impossibility of hope is the impossibility of hopeless. Because where self lives is just flipping usually from hope, oh, I've got a plan, I've got a new path, I've found a new teacher, to, oh shit, he's clueless, that hasn't worked, hopeless. And this flip-flopping between hope and hopeless is, you could say that describes my life. And it describes a lot of my friends' lives who I've spoken to. And without hope, there is no hopeless. You can't say what is there without hope and hopeless? Well, it's just what is.
This one is from Dario. Dario, if you wanted to ask this question, is this the end of the world? If you want to add to that. Is this the end of the world, Tim?
Yeah. And the beginning. And the beginning and the end are not two. There's no in between. So if beginning and end are not two, there is no beginning and end. It's the same. So yes, this is the end, and there is no end. I mean, the world exists. What we call the world is in relation to me. So there's me, I'm separate from the world, and I am aware of the world. I'm conscious of the world. So in that sense, yes, the end of the world. And then here's the world. It's the end of my world, not the world. And the world was never mine. Now that is delusion. You know, I have a world, my world, in which I live.
Lindy, please go ahead.
Hello. I just wanted to say thank you to John. Both of his questions or points were things that I often think about. So that was really useful. That was really useful to hear about that. But I have a well, I don't know. I mean, it still goes into the world of cause and effect, but I thought I'd just throw it out there.
Yeah.
That, you know, it is very confusing, isn't it, to the individual? You see people who suddenly, for want of a better word, get it. And they've been doing meditation, all these spiritual things and whatever. But
Yeah.
I was actually wondering, because that it seems right that it doesn't seem to, that there's no correlation. So many people, including you, say there isn't any. And at first, you go, oh, I don't get it. But it just suddenly occurred to me when thinking about it, that again, it's a theory and it's in duality. But maybe a lot of those people who hoped or who did spiritual practices and whatever, because they knew there was something different to just what we see and what we feel.
Yeah.
That's the only place that they could look for what it was. There was a tiny bit of resonance in the truth of things, if you see what I mean. So it's actually the other way around. So we're there because some of us have done all that, because we're destined to find this path, and we have to go through all the paths that aren't really paths before we actually get it. Do you see what I mean? Oh gosh, I had a feeling I wouldn't be able to say this, which is why I left it till the end. But then my finger just pressed the button.
Oh, well done for saying it. Yeah. No.
You see what I mean? It's almost like contra. You know, that's. Yeah. I don't know whether anybody else gets that, whether John gets that, but it's sort of the opposite theory. Those of us who end up here. Yeah. Have tried all the other things because we've known there's something else somewhere, and that's the only place we thought we might be able to find it. Hence, more people who've been in spiritual circles, theoretically, I don't know what the answer is, seem to have got this than people on the street. I mean, I know of more people that I know of who've been on various spiritual paths who you know, whatever, however you say it, have dropped away than I've ever heard or known of, which I may not just in normal life, but
yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with that as a statistic. I'm guessing you're probably right, but the statistic is just as it is. So I would say, yeah, there's more spiritual seekers than my mates who I played football with. You know, most of those are not coming to any of my meetings, and they and then they've got no interest in it because they're, you know. But it's all seen that none of that has any significance. It's really because really the freedom is from significance. The insignificance of how this came to be, because it's very obviously unknowable. Then the whole illusion is that I could know, and if I knew, then it would help, you know, in some way. Whatever I fantasize that that knowledge would help me in some way.
Yeah.
And,
I'm very aware that this little theory of mine definitely brings us into the philosophy of non-duality rather than the experience of non-duality, but it's something that keeps cropping up for me. And I think you're right, it's the despite, it's the despite all the spiritual stuff you've done that that this happens. Anyway, I just thought that might be a useful thing to just to
And I will say, I mean, I'm perhaps the one of the exceptions of your suggestion, in that I didn't follow any spiritual path.
That's although you did find Tony Parsons, and although I know there's no way he's spiritual.
You suggesting Tony's got a spiritual message? I don't think so.
Certainly not to him. No. I mean, I watch and listen to, and I've been whatever.
And the reason that Tony's message resonated so much here is because it wasn't spiritual. It was like, whoa, this isn't like anything I've ever heard. What the hell? This is so ordinary. Just this builder, this bloke, this ordinary, incredibly, without pretension. That's what resonated.
Yeah, well, perhaps you're the exception to the rule that proves my little hypothesis.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I just thought about this recently, and it's the first time I've really put it out there. But it was John's. I resonated with what John was saying, that it does. It's just trying to get your head around it, which I know is useless, but you can't help it, really, can you? So there you go.
And I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, it's a nice theory. It's a nice hypothesis. It has no significance whatsoever. But it because there is no knowing, and it's the no knowing that is being spoken of, and there, whether your hypothesis scientifically is true or not is of no significance, and that's the freedom, and that's the peace. Because if your theory was correct and it was significant, then we'd have to be doing something about it. Or it would suggest that we could do something about
it. Maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks for listening anyway. I just somehow it just needed to pop out. So there you go.
Right, fine. Thank you.
Sorry, John, I think we ran out of time here. Is that okay for next time, or do you want to take one more question, Tim? I'm not sure. It's already it's up to you.
I don't mind. It's up to you.
Okay, John. Go ahead, John.
Sorry, I just wanted to sort of add in response. Tim, it's I think around. Well, first of all, I know that you are into sort of psychology and stuff like that. So the point is not what the books were. The point is that you were seeking, and you were seeking in one area as opposed to another. I mean,
absolutely.
You were seeking. Yeah. Because the yearning for something was there.
Oh, undoubtedly, seeking is seeking.
Yeah. But I think that, of course, we are surrounded by these people who we can look at and think that person's not interested in this, my little secret. Oh, and these really nice guys who come to Tim Cliss's meetings, they all are sort of drawn to it. But I'm sure that the world is full of people who are not there as selves, and they haven't even realized. They're just getting on with it. And they have no interest in talking to anyone about it because they don't even know that they are not there.
No, because there is no knowing. There is no knowing not there. No.
Yeah. And so, I mean, it's true that you'll point to your footballing mates, and I'll point to my mates at work, and we'll think, they're bloody miles away. But I mean, they are not representative of the world, of course. And I'm sure that in the world, if only we could find them, there'd be tons of people who have understood what you're talking about, but they don't even know that they understood.
No, I don't doubt that for a minute, John. I'm sure that's
all I wanted to say. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, John.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much, everyone. There was a request to do a breakout room after this meeting. We're going to do it. If you guys want to stay, we're going to open up a breakout room. Thank you so much, Tim. That was beautiful, as always.
Thanks for inviting me, Emerson. And if I could just say, for people who come regularly on a Thursday, I won't have a meeting next week because I'm going away the following day, so there won't be a meeting next Thursday.
Can I just ask a technical question, Tim?
on then.
So, you know, are there still tickets for your session in Copenhagen?
Yes.
Okay, because you can't ask that simple question. You have to book up for it, but you can't ask the question, is it possible to book up for it, as I've discovered recently. Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, there is, yeah, there's still space if you'd like to come.
Yeah, I'd love to.
If you're interested, I'm speaking in Copenhagen next weekend for the whole weekend, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. And if you're interested, then you can have a look on my website. All the details are there.
Great.
I've also posted a donate button here for Tim, if you would like to, timclissthis.com. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.